Hello, welcome to the show today. I have the great Dr. Walter E. Williams, person I've been wanting to get on the show for a long time. He was kind enough and good enough to lend us his time on this very busy Friday, very busy summer weekend. Dr. Walter Williams, how are you doing this evening? This afternoon,
okay.
Sorry. So it's great to have you on. There's a lot that I want to cover with you, and I want to really dive right into it because there's more than people understand that's going on with the debt ceiling talks and things like that. And there's a lot of talk about it. There's, of course, when there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of misinformation about it. So I really want to set the record straight. There's a lot of word coming out of D.C. that we need to raise the debt ceiling, how much we need to raise it by, whether we need to add strings to it, things like that. But I want to clear the air, and I pressed Congressman Farenthold on this when I had him on earlier in the week. What is the truth? If we do not raise the debt ceiling prior to the August 2nd deadline, does the world end the first week of August? Do we default on our debt? Does the market collapse? What is the truth behind all this rhetoric?
Well, I don't know, but surely the Treasury is not obliged to do anything that would create a default. That is, we're receiving, I believe it's something like over $200 billion that come into the Treasury from tax revenues per month. It's somewhere around there, and surely that is a plenty to be able to pay the interest on the debt so that you don't default. But however, it would require that Congress cut other spending. And Congress just does not want to cut the other spending, and I believe that that applies to both the Democrats and the Republicans, although less so to the Republicans. So there's no way that by August 2nd we have to default on the debt.
It just seems too catastrophic for me to be that close to it and not be that serious about it when we have Obama pouting and storming out of rooms and things like that and telling Congressman Cantor, don't call my bluff. And I'm not speaking as a partisan, but I'm speaking as a professional and as being the most powerful man in the world. You really should not be storming out of rooms and trying to get your way on every single thing. Terry Jeffries, go ahead.
And I was just saying that I was going to say that, and he's playing really, the fear game, telling soldiers and maybe telling senior citizens that they won't get their Social Security checks. I think that is despicable.
Well, to that point, Terry Jeffries reported on CNSNews.com, a good outlet, and they do a lot of good investigative reporting and undercover reporting. But there's an official Treasury report that covers full enough to cover entitlement programs, veterans, federal salaries, and interest without borrowing a dime. Doesn't that cover basically everything?
Oh, yes.
They have all the money there. Why are they lying to us?
That's a very naive question. A matter of fact, some years ago, somebody asked the question, how can you tell whether a politician is lying? Well, you look at him and see if his lips are moving.
Yeah, I love that. I actually use that quite often with people, and every time they get a good laugh out of that one. Because it is true, and obviously the stats are there, and the media, at the worst part of it, the media is not calling out the president, calling out any administration. The Republicans, I think, which is the most egregious of all, the Republicans are not saying it, and they're supposed to be the counterbalance to the administration. So what's the
and you're right, and it's something that I've not heard anybody talk about, and I don't have all the details, and somebody should look at it. Is that the Treasury has huge gold deposits, and they could sell the gold to take care of, if there's a problem paying the interest on the debt, and they could sell the gold at a hell of a good price because it's $1,500 an ounce, and they can sell it. And so I think the big problem for us is that we have a spending problem. We don't have a tax problem. The president is pretending that it's a tax problem. But if you just look at the numbers, since 1960, tax revenue coming into Washington has grown by 20 times. Tax revenues that are 20 times more than they were in 1960. But what's the problem? it turns out that spending is 42 times as much as it was in 1960. So if Congress spends, well, then we're always going to have a big problem. And then also these people are you cannot trust these people. During the Reagan administration, he felt, Congress promised them when they did give in to a tax increase, Congress promised him that that there would be a $2 spending cut for each $1 tax increase. And the same thing happened in 1990 when President Bush went back on his vow not to sign a tax increase. It was the same promise. And these people might promise us the same thing today. So they take us for fools, or they take us for the public, that the public does not have much of a memory, and which is probably true.
Well, it seems that way because things, after all those tax talks, and even though taxes have gone up on some people, and the whole system is a little bizarre now, especially when you have the people that are writing it not abiding by it. Talking about Charlie Rangel, who by all means should not be in Congress today, should be sitting in a jail cell because you and I would be. And again, that's not speaking as a partisan, that's speaking as a person who appreciates fairness and justice. There's been a lot of talk lately. Chuck Schumer is pressing Obama to utilize the 14th Amendment and just basically bypass and circumvent Congress, who is by the Constitution, which obviously doesn't seem to apply anymore these days, but to bypass Congress, who's supposed to hold the purse strings, and all the spending and all the spending packages has to come out of Congress, and then the president doles it out. But he wants Obama to have the power to do to just basically do what he wants and unilaterally raise the debt ceiling and do whatever he wants.
And from the way I see it, and I'm not a constitutional scholar, and I've heard part of the debate, but it says clearly in Article 1, Section 8 that all spending measures and all revenue measures are in the hands of the House of Representatives, and they can create debt for the to cover the expenses of the United States government. It says nothing about the president. And matter of fact, I don't even believe the word president is in Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. And so it's talking about the powers of Congress.
And Senator Mitch McConnell, I don't know how much you've been able to dive into his planned proposal. Heritage Action for America is against it. They actually sent out an email blast just a little bit before we went on the air to call your senators, call your congressmen, whomever, your representatives, to reject it. Now, Senator McConnell's proposal is basically giving the administration a power that apparently he's asking for, and I'm not too sure that Obama is asking for it because he likes to politicize, and it's the job of a politician. But he's basically giving the president the power that he didn't have before. Now, as an economist and obviously somebody that knows a lot about how economic policy in the country works and what affects it, what doesn't, what political moves do and don't, how do you feel about Senator McConnell's proposal to give the president the authority to control basically the debt ceiling and and the whole plan and all the talks?
Well, I think it's absolutely unconstitutional, and if he does do something like that, I think that there should be some kind of a suit. I mean, go to the Supreme Court. But at the end of the day, if we look at the politicians and we look at the president, we can blame them. We can blame them for a few things. But the bulk of the blame for the problems that we face as an American lies with the American people. It has its roots in immorality among the American people. And what I mean by that is Americans elect people to office to use the power of their office to take what belongs to one American and bring it back to them, whether you're talking about farm subsidies, bank bailouts, business bailouts, welfare, food stamp. you have to keep in mind that the federal government, when Congress, they have no resources of their very own. There's no tooth fairy or Santa Claus giving them the resources. So when you recognize that the government has no resource of its very own, you have to recognize that that the only way the government can give one American citizen $1 is to first take it from another. And this is what the American people want. And you might say, well, gee, you're being somewhat unkind, Williams. Well, imagine I'm running for the United States Senate from New York or from any state. And I go back and forth across the state, and I tell my constituents, look, I've read the Constitution of the United States. I know what's authorized by the Constitution. So if you elect me to office, don't expect for me to bring back billions of dollars in aid to higher education. It's not in the Constitution. Highway construction, it's not in the Constitution, and all these other things. Do you think I would be elected to the Senate from any state if I said that? No, I wouldn't. And the reason why is that I would not be doing what my constituents wanted. And what do they want? They want me to use the power of my office to take what belongs to one America and bring it back to them. And the tragic thing about this is that they're acting absolutely right by not electing me to office. Because, for example, if I don't bring back, as senator from New York, if I don't bring back billions of dollars to New York citizens, it does not mean that New York citizens will pay a lower federal income tax. All that it means is that New Jersey will get it instead. That is, once legalized theft begins, it pays for everybody to get involved. And so we have a big moral problem in our country.
Right, it's an institutional problem, and thank you for pointing that out, because a lot of people don't get that. And even Ron Paul, who's looked at as a fiscal hero for a lot of people, he's about as big a porker as it gets, and a lot of his followers, if they knew that, they'd probably shy away from him. But this is, as you said, it's basically a casino, and the person that can count cards the best is the person that walks out with the most money, or whoever knows the strategy the best. It's just how it works when you legalize theft. And
that's right. And I'm very sure and there are many Christians in America, and I'm very sure that they have to recognize when God gave Moses the commandment, thou shalt not steal, he did not mean that thou shalt not steal unless you got a majority vote in Congress. And probably, if you ask God, well, is it okay to be a recipient of stolen goods? Well, I believe that would be deemed a sin as well. And so, this is what the American people want.
That's a great analogy, and it goes actually along with John Adams' quote that America was built for a moral and religious people, and once we lose both tenets, the society begins to crumble and so forth. It seems like a lot of that's what we're seeing today, that when society stops to care, everybody wants to get their piece of the pie, nobody wants to put into that pie or, add the sugar or get the nutmeg or the pie crust. They just want to take the piece out of there and not even leave the crumbs, and that's a huge problem. And we're seeing that fester and bubble up. Now, I want to just talk a little bit more about the debt talks. And Obama gave their press conference today, and he cited a very interesting and seemingly deceptive statistic earlier that 80% of Americans want taxes raised. And the Hill actually reported on this as well. Could this number be true, or is Obama just politicizing the argument?
No, it could be. It could be very true. That is, look. Just quite recently, I believe that either close to 50% of all Americans, it can be, and it might be slightly over 50%, like 51%, 50% of all Americans have no federal income tax liability. Now, so that is very, very dangerous because, and it's legally so. There's all the kinds of exemptions that they have, but that's a big problem. That is, when you have 50% of Americans with no federal income tax liability, they become natural constituents for big spending politicians. Because if you have no federal income tax liability,